let's go straight to our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clarke, who joins me now. And Professor, I mean, what we've heard in the last few minutes from Iraqi militia, from Hamas, all praising Iran's actions. The Iraqi militias have said that if Israel responds, and should the United States support Israel, which no doubt it will do, bases in the United States will be targeted, which we've seen happen on a number of occasions over the years.
Yes, and we're likely to see more of the same. That's fairly predictable. Whether those attacks will be really consequential, I rather doubt. I mean, the Americans have got about 40,000 troops in the region spread across the whole of the Middle Eastern region. So there's plenty of bases, and they've got a few bases, 3 or 4, right on the Iraqi-Syrian border because of their operations against Islamic State and some of the related groups. So they have, some hundreds of troops who are in harm's way, and several thousand troops across the region in many bases, like Al Udeid. It's the enormous air base in Doha, just outside Doha, a very big base. So the Americans are not, there are plenty of targets, but the Americans will have been expecting this, and they'll be on full alert. And it's inevitable in a way that Hamas and Hezbollah spokespeople and some of those people from the militias that the IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guard, support, they will say these things, and they will try to create a sort of spike in terroristic activities. I think that's fairly inevitable. There's something else, Yalda, which I think was very interesting in what Deborah was saying. She was pointing out very interestingly and very importantly that a lot of the missiles she could see herself were being intercepted, and there's an explosion, and the debris has got to fall somewhere. And I've just been looking at some footage of some of the debris that seems to have fallen in Amman, in Jordan. And that's inevitable and quite destructive debris, so it may cause injuries. But she also pointed out, very importantly, that some of the missiles just carry on their way. And it's really important to understand when we're trying to think about how effectively the Iron Dome, Israel's defense system, works, is that what they do is they track incoming missiles. And if they think that the missile is going to land in a place that doesn't matter, they just let it go. Because there's no point using a very expensive air defense missile against something that's going to fall into the middle of the desert. And the point about this is that ballistic missiles are much more predictable than cruise missiles. If a cruise missile is on its way, although a cruise missile is much easier to shoot down, it's harder to predict where it will go because it's programmed to go to a particular target, and it may be programmed to dodge around and go on a decoy and then turn back in and so on before it reaches its target. So you don't really know, and you've got no choice but to shoot cruise missiles down if you can. But ballistic missiles, the sort that the Iranians are using, are almost certainly the variations of the Fatah 110, which they've developed many years ago. They only burn for maybe 30, 40 seconds or something like that, and then they're on pure ballistics. So once the takeoff has been detected, and they're easy to detect on takeoff because they're slow and hot and they have a very big signature. So once the missile is taken off and it's burned, it's pure ballistics. It's just like throwing a stone. So it's going then in an arc. And although it's a very big arc, and although it's actually very hard to defend against, it's actually easy to work out where it's going to land. And so the whole of the Iron Dome system is also built on a very sophisticated monitoring system. And they work out which missiles they need to intercept and which they just let go. And so when the Iranians can claim that, lots of missiles have landed, some of them probably will have. Some of them will have landed in the middle of nowhere, and the Israelis have just let them go. That's the way the Iron Dome system works, which will complicate some of the claims that will be being made tomorrow morning, but we'll get to the bottom of it, I think, fairly quickly.
Yeah, Professor Michael Clarke, just help our audiences understand the entirety of their interception, system, because of course there is the Iron Dome, but there's David Sling and there is the Arrow as well.
Yeah, indeed. And they all work at different levels. And so the problems of intercepting missiles depends on the altitude of them, how high they are, and how fast they're going. And so what the Israelis have developed, partly with a lot of their own technology, but some American technology and some Patriot batteries, and Patriots are the best batteries in the world at shooting down anything, really, but they're also very expensive. I mean, every Patriot battery costs about $1 billion. and that's about 400 million for the battery and about 600 million for the ammunition, all the rockets that it fires. So they're very expensive, and you don't use Patriots against some cheap $20,000 drone. And so the Israeli defence system is based on, as you say, it's the Arrow system, David Sling, and the Iron Dome itself. It's not all Iron Dome. Iron Dome is the big overall system, and they've got a lot of Patriots too. So the system is very sophisticated, but it's also based on the ability to let things go as well as knowing what you have to intercept.
Yeah, indeed. And despite this interception, despite the IDF saying that, I'm just going to read this update, they said that they've identified approximately 180 missiles fired towards the Israeli territory from Iran. And security officials have said that the Israeli Air Force, in cooperation with the US Air Force, intercepted most of the missiles. Several hits were identified and damage is being assessed. So, Professor, they're basically assessing at this stage, although ambulance services, the IDF spokesperson has said that there are minor injuries, but, from what it sounds, contradicts what Iranian state TV, who are claiming that, 80% of them managed to reach their targets.
Yeah, and you would expect minor injuries because when a missile is intercepted, the debris has got to fall somewhere. And that seems to have happened at the one case I saw a few minutes ago in Amman, by the look of it. So, yeah, I mean, destructive debris will fall, and you would expect there to be some injuries. So that's logical. That doesn't mean to say the attack has been successful, but it will give the Iranians something to talk about tomorrow, and it will give the rest of us something to assess. And we'll see where we are with it. The Israeli approach to this seems to be to absorb the attack, to regard it as over and done with as quickly as possible, and then to turn around to the Iranians and say, OK, if that's your best shot, what have you got left? I mean, the Israelis do seem to be in a very bellicose mood at the moment, which is why I think London and Washington, they're all saying we support Israel's right to defend itself, but be careful. I mean, for heaven's sake, let's get to a ceasefire as soon as possible. And I think, as Deborah was saying, that's not really on Israel's agenda at the moment because they're doing so well, or they think they're doing so well, that they're not terribly interested in pulling back.